welcome everybody to Generationally Speaking. My name's Brad. I'm the lead pastor and resident boomer. I screw it up every time. I knew there was another line in there. And this is Jordan Chitwood, our online pastor and resident millennial here.
Hey. Welcome, Kevin, Janet, Michaela, and Susan. Oh, we're so glad
we can definitely go now.
Yeah, and,
here, I just want to say, this is season 3, episode 12.
Episode 12.
And I want you to know that, Jordan, I don't know, Bruce, can you get this? Okay. This is the outline that Jordan gives me every week.
Yep.
And I want you to understand, he has me talking about the intro here, but then he says Jordan saves intro.
Yep. That's the number 2. But hey,
because he knows I'm going to screw it up every time.
Single time. Michaela says, is anybody else's feed cutting in and out?
Oh, boy.
It's probably everyone's, honestly, but we're just going to go with it. But hey, everyone, it is the final serious night of season 3. We have had so many incredible conversations.
It's been a great season.
It's been a great
season. It really
season.
has. It's been, I would say, our best topics and communication.
Best engagement.
Yeah, it's been really good. And we love that when you guys engage and really talk about this.
Yeah, I think the coolest part is for the first 2 seasons, we were really trying to figure out what is our niche, what is our, our theme,
why are we doing
brand,
this?
why are we even doing this?
Right.
And so we tried a lot of different things, a lot of different feelers, but we figured it out. Kind of.
Yeah.
And we have more comments now than, season 1 and 2 we'd have for the whole night.
Whole night,
and it's just people saying hello.
Yeah.
And so thank you for tuning in this season. We are going to spend the summertime taking a break.
We are going to do some fun stuff, though, every once in a while.
Yep, I think we're doing a fun stream we talked about in July, and then we'll probably do something in June, too. But
we're also going to do, we think we're going to do on our next, are we going to talk about our next series? Well, anyway.
No, we won't do that now because it won't be an official Generationally Speaking, but it'll be a podcast time.
We're going to do a podcast about finance
for our next
stuff.
Series
yeah,
about
so
finances.
Anyway, go ahead.
So it'll be really good, a lot of exciting stuff. What we're going to be doing over the summer is planning out all of the content. And so if you have any ideas, I'll send an all-church email out a little bit later. If you have any ideas, conversations, things that you'd love for us to talk about, either private message, put it in the chat, let us know. But we're going to start gathering all of those ideas and kind of playing out, the fall and winter and then the spring. So it's kind of what we do with our teaching calendar. We break it up into 2 planning sessions. And all of that. Janet says her audio is also cutting out. Susan, though, says that she enjoys the great blend of serious and fun. And so we are going to keep doing that where we will have a fun stream and a serious stream. But hey, tonight, season 3, episode 12, we are talking about, to wrap up this season, being a perfectionist, which you had no idea what that was.
I always knew what a perfectionist was, but I was surprised that we were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And apparently, it's more common.
Yep.
We'll get to that.
Yep.
But it's almost, to me, it was almost like the mental health thing.
Yep.
Why are we talking about this?
And mental health is actually a really big
part of this
byproduct of someone who's a perfectionist.
Exactly.
And that's what we're noticing a lot with younger generations. So kind of the roadmap for tonight, we're going to talk about some percentages, some data about what a perfectionist is. And what generations struggle with being a perfectionist and perfectionism. We're going to talk about some root causes of what plays a role and what has played a role in perfectionist, and why different generations lean towards that lifestyle. And then what does God say? And you're going to have a little bit of banter between me and Brad, because it wouldn't be a podcast without some banter.
Yeah, and because this is one of those topics that I don't understand, and I'm going to rely on you. I'm throwing you under the bus right now.
I love being thrown under the
because
bus.
it's one of those things that I don't necessarily get a whole lot of.
Sure, and that's kind of what the data show too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why don't you share with us some of the data about? Well, here, let me just define perfectionism.
Oh yeah, you define that first.
Perfectionism: somebody who is OCD or overwhelmed about doing everything the right way, the best way, on time, efficiently, perfectly, very detailed, and then we'll dwell and stress about that which needs to be done.
Yeah.
So why don't you read us some of the data?
Okay, here's some of the data, or data, or whatever it is.
Data.
Millennials are considered the perfectionist generation.
Yeah, I saw that label.
I would never in a million years have thought that.
Me either. But then when you start to understand that it's a lot of because of mental health plays a big role in it, and anxiety and stuff, it makes sense why millennials struggle so much with mental health. Because
I'm still shocked.
Well, so perfectionism, again, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, millennials don't strive for perfection to increase productivity or even to they do it, and they've leaned out of it because of how people view them, how their peers view them, their parents pushing them.
That's kind of a light bulb for me there, because see, that's what I link perfectionism with in my generation.
Because that's what boomers associate perfectionism with productivity.
Absolutely.
And
see, I actually told Jordan and Bruce at dinner tonight, I said, I'm going to drop a bomb. And I think this is where it comes in, is that I didn't understand how it could affect your generation so much, because I'm thinking, can I just be blunt and say, this is how my generation, not me, of course, would
never Bradley
would say, is that you guys don't do anything, so how can you be perfectionist?
Right.
And that's where that stems from. When you said that, it was a light bulb. And I say that with all the love of Jesus in my heart. but that's the and that, because that was my filter of it has to do with production. You guys aren't concerned with that, or care about that, or do any of it.
That's what,
and that's not true with everyone. And I know that, but that's just. I think that's what my generation would say about this whole thing.
Yep. For boomers, production is 100% perfectionism. Is there a way of leaning
all
into
production,
that?
job, performance,
Period. For millennials, what the perfectionists came down to, and this is a little bit later on, but we'll just jump to it now, is a lot of the peer pressure of being creative. Okay, and so you'll see a lot of my generation becoming more artistic and more creative and doing things their way. But then even leading into their projects, they'll spend. That's why they kept asking for extensions on due dates of things. And well, no, it needs to be done on June 12th, but I didn't get it done the way I wanted to. So I'm gonna have 4 more days to do it. Rather than no, this is when it was supposed to be due. That's what your generation. This is when it was supposed to be due.
That's when you get it done by.
Get it done. I'm like, yeah, but I really didn't get to. And it's something that my
maybe that's because you should
be
playing video games.
You're right. I'm about to punch you.
I couldn't resist.
But then another part of it too is the parents for millennials pushed college so hard.
Oh yeah,
and that's still what's happening with teens today.
And not only college, in everything.
Right.
I mean,
more.
Yeah.
Yep. Sports.
I had a conversation with a dad this week, and talking about even pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and man, we got to be the best. It's just anyway. That's another topic.
Hey, Michaela shared something really great.
Oh yeah.
I think that perfectionism can lead to what looks like laziness, but is actually just fear and procrastination, and that's a big thing too, because of. And this is going to sound so weird to you, Bradley. A lot of people who struggle with perfectionism will shut down. Again, in your mindset, you think that they'd overwork, overproduce, overdo.
Right.
For younger people, it's just the fear of not doing it right or not being able to do it right that it causes so much fear and anxiety inside that they shut down and miss the deadline.
And don't do anything.
Right. Rather than trying to just get it done, they don't want to even deal with it.
Wow.
Yep.
Totally
and that's something.
foreign.
Yeah, that's something that my sister.
Is that foreign to you, Bruce?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
And Bruce says it makes no sense. But I mean, Bruce, your daughters have all struggled with that. At least 2 of the 3 for sure, and then Marissa does. I just show which one did it.
Whoops.
Yeah. Oh man. Hey, so Susan Key says.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Did you see what Susan said?
I was just gonna read it. Do you want to read it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, Susan says, I feel like the perfectionist drive comes from the internal pressure living up to others' expectations, not wanting to let them down.
That I get.
Yes.
And one of the notes, because I did a little bit of study, like 5 minutes before.
I'm so proud of you.
But one of the things I said was being critical of self.
Yes.
And I see that in your generation.
Yep.
I see it in ours too.
Yep.
I mean, I see that across the board, but I think it's even more pronounced. And your explanation of why that is, I think that hits home a little bit.
And that part,
I don't get it.
Well, that leads to then the anxiety and the depression and the insecurities. That leads to the mental health aspect of things. But another
that blizzard's coming up on you.
That good chocolate, that good Royal Ultimate Fudge blizzard. All right, here's another stat for us: 30% of all young people, which is Millennial and Gen Z, suffer from perfectionism. A third. A new study in 2018 found that 32% of college students are struggling with perfectionism. And perfectionist tendencies have led to an increase in anxiety, depression, and suicide rates among young people, which is just scary.
And the last stat is boomers struggle the least with perfectionism.
Yep. And the last stat was boomers struggle the least. So when I was looking at the data, which was fascinating, when you had the groups of people who struggled with perfectionism, and I was looking at the data, of the millennials who struggled with perfectionism, okay, the millennials who did struggled 70% of the time. Okay?
Wow.
Of the boomers, which is a much lower percentage of people who struggle with perfectionism, but of the boomers who did struggle with perfectionism, said they only struggle with it 50% of the time, which still seemed like a lot, but you're talking to me about millennials. 70% of their lives are dwelling on being a perfectionist. Michaela said, I've heard perfectionism is the belief that you can avoid criticism of any kind. You never want to do anything wrong or rock the boat, so you do nothing, or you kill yourself trying to do something that will never be enough. Whew! Wow. Yeah, that'll hit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you see what Susan says? I never used to set goals for fear of failure.
Ooh. You know, I've seen that a lot of people, in people who are perfectionists. Scared to set goals, scared to set dreams.
What's that saying that if you shoot for the stars and you miss, you hit
the moon?
Hit the moon or something like that?
I don't know. Something about that.
It sounded wise. I don't know. but you know, and I guess, see, it's just a different mindset. And it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that whole process.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating because I've struggled. Well, I used to really struggle with what I call, and I still do, take the word used to out of it. Part of what I've gone to counseling for is what they've called personality perfectionist. So for me, it's not a task-oriented perfectionist. It's I'm so cautious of my personality and my emotions and now upsetting those around me that I've dwelled so much on how I handle how I carry myself around people. Or if I have a conversation with somebody, I used to dwell all the time on, did I say the right words? For hours and hours the next day. And my counselor called a personality perfectionist, especially someone wired like me. For those who like the Enneagram, actually, I don't even know what my Enneagram number is. But anyway, personality, that's a little bit more, I say passionate. People say aggressive, hard,
Because on a disc scale, you're pretty high D.
Yep.
Yeah. And see that, and I would expect that perfectionist style out of you because, and again, it goes back to the production thing. Because I think you're kind of a rare bird. I'm
a rare bird.
You're a rare bird.
I'm a peacock.
Something like that. You're something, all right. But that yours is about production in certain parts. Yeah.
Well, I just like.
You want to be the best. You want to be the best you can be.
Yes, best version of myself. I love working hard. I love getting things done. I love taking things to the next level.
Right.
And so I'll always be challenging myself, challenging others. And when that really boils down, and when I start getting anxiety from it, is when it's with my personality, or with my spiritual growth.
It's interesting.
I won't see a task, and part of why I'm able to edit videos and photos so quickly, or write poetry or write, is because I don't dwell on the writing being perfect. I trust myself and I trust God in the process. There's people who would, let's say today I wrote a poem in 30 minutes for Good Friday tomorrow. Okay. And Bruce was like, wow, that was, fast. I'm like, yeah. And that's just because for me, I'm like, hey, I didn't make any revisions. I just wrote it. There's people though who are task-oriented perfectionists who they'll see that they would have spent all day on that one poem. It's like you with your letters to the church. It's like when you spend an entire day writing a letter to the church.
I can't spell. I have no idea what grammar means.
And you type like this.
And I type like this. So but it's true. Yeah.
Yep. And so for me, it's less.
And there are things like that I do because I've got a letter. If that's a great example for me is
what about landscape?
I don't think,
or design stuff. Does it have to look perfect or it will bother you?
Yes. Yeah.
Will you dwell on it or are you able to make quick changes?
I'm able to make quick changes.
Yeah, that's what I see in you. There's some people who aren't able to make quick changes. And you'll see this a lot. Bruce raised his hand. You'll see this a lot with audio engineering. Okay?
You're saying you can't make quick changes?
No, Trevor makes fun of him all the time for being a slow worker, you know? But
it's a grand point.
But with audio engineering, it's the thing is you'll listen to something over and over again, and like to us, you won't even be able to tell the difference.
I can't tell you how many times I told Bruce, no one's gonna hear that.
No one's gonna know. Yeah,
and it's kind of like with graphics.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
Some of you, you're kind of that way with graphics and things. Is that everything's got to be perfect and this color and or video and what have you.
Asking for the right color, the right feel, the right theme, the creative side of stuff I really care about.
Yeah.
But again, I don't have the time, but there's people who don't have the time who would still waste time getting it 100% perfect. I've gotten to a place now where I'm like, hey, it's good enough, and I've just got to be okay with that. Now, personality-wise, I'm not even close to there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, let's move on.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So next part of the conversation. We want to share some reasons for why millennials and Gen Z struggle with being a perfectionist. And then we've already talked about this a little bit, but then also why boomers struggle with perfectionism. I was talking to Trevor, a youth pastor, and this has been a conversation that we've had really the last couple of months. It boiled down to a conversation we've had with our teens where Trevor asked them if they were happy and if they felt like their teammates could be their friends.
Right.
And all of them said no, and like, I'm only happy when I'm, successful. And then Trevor asked them about, viewing success and, how's your relationship with your parents and how do your parents view success? And they're like, well, my parent wants me to go to college and they want me to, have a 3.5, 4.0 GPA.
They want me to play a sport every season.
And like, these are these expectations. And if they don't, then they get in trouble or they get viewed a certain way or they're grounded or like, we're creating a culture where it's not okay for our child to fail is what it comes down to.
Well, and that shows even, you talk about that. It's why when the kid comes home from school and a teacher has reprimanded or something, it's the teacher's fault.
Yep.
Instead of the kid's fault.
Yep. And so then the parent will blame the teacher.
Exactly.
Rather than, talking with the child and saying, hey, why did you drop the F-bomb?
Right.
I'm like, well, we were listening to the music and I was just rapping the lyric and it's not my fault the teacher doesn't know the lyric. I'm like, hey, don't you know that the kids just drop the F-bomb nowadays? I'm like,
yeah.
So the, reasons that Millennial and Gen Z struggle with perfectionism, the two things that one we talked about is because of parents putting pressure on their kids. And then second is because the peers are putting pressure on one another. This leads to anxiety, leads to depression, fitting in, all that.
I honestly see that, the peer pressure happening into even my grandson who's a kindergartner.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's just nuts.
The younger they get, it's just growing. I mean, your kid's got it. Think about it. I bet your grandson's got peers who have cell phones already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're thinking about like that. And like, Parker's what? Kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay. Kindergartners. If you don't have a cell phone as kindergarten, you're the only one of your peers who doesn't. Just think about that.
It's wild.
And you start ingraining in them that like, hey, in order to fit in, I've got to be the best. That's what, having the cell phone, not having a cell phone in your group, not being on the starting lineup as a first grader, your brain starts to analyze like that group is being praised for something I'm not.
Right.
And that tendency of perfectionism, being the best, doing the best, working the hardest. Yes.
We can't even allow them to have fun anymore.
Nope.
There's
no fun involved in perfectionism because it's all about doing the best you can.
Yeah.
And our society has grown so much into fun leads to failure that we've, walked away from it. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
And it goes back to, I don't know who was it Michaela? No, it was Susan who said, then why even try?
Why dream? Why set goals? Why try?
Huh. There's a lot of light bulbs coming on for me here.
I'm glad.
You
don't have many light bulbs to
I don't have
go
a
off
lot of light bulb moments.
Susan says social media makes it worse. People portray life as all sunshine and rainbows, not realistic. Stinking men. You know what this reminds me of? They call it Instagram personality. I don't know if you've heard this before, where people will post their best photos on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's something I've thought about with posting all the pictures of Uriah. You're like, you're not going to see me posting his mental breakdowns,
right?
Because I don't want the rest of the world to see that. But 90 now, Uriah's a really great kid. I mean, Uriah is not a normal baby. We got blessed with someone who's like doesn't cry very often. I'm sorry. I know that makes some of you upset and jealous.
It is what it is.
It's not hard for me to post photos on Instagram, but you'll see people on their timeline, you know, they'll put this perfect picturesque and this beautiful photo or something that looks so, you know, Instagram worthy. But then they take off the covers and that's why I'm so honest about my mental health on social media.
Right.
Especially as a pastor, I'm like, hey, like I struggle with grief. I struggle with anxiety, depression, and even your honesty throughout this podcast. Because a lot of times the boomers are trashed for, man, you're so racist, you know?
Yeah.
Or you're so misogynistic, or you're so homophobic. Like there are people who are like that, but what we've got to recognize is it's been such a cultural shift in the last 10 years, really?
Yeah, I mean, we turned the ship like immediately.
Quick.
It just wasn't,
And now all of a sudden the language you're using isn't okay anymore, and like but the expectations are like you got to be perfect,
right?
Okay. And so why I share that is because a lot of times when we're talking about these new things, okay, you've got to be very careful with some of the language you use.
It's honestly one of the things that, I mean, we talked a little bit about this at dinner tonight, is even series that we want to do, you know, that, man, we've got to be so careful because no matter what you say, it's wrong in somebody's eyes.
Yep.
And it doesn't hold. I want to be careful here.
See,
you know, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't hold us back to standing up for truth and God's purposes and things, or what He says. But yet we're still trying to have influence with people.
Right.
And we've talked about this for the last, and I think it's gotten even worse lately.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of that is because just the tension just continues to build, and the bubble builds and builds and builds. But your generation receives a lot of the low end of the sticks because, I mean, we're in
some of it very well deserved.
Some of it is well deserved, yes. But you don't have to. I'm trying to like let people know too is that like throughout this podcast, this whole season, we've talked about some topics that like have been really difficult for you and your generation, and it's just so cool that we're able to have those conversations, especially like because there are some things you just downright don't understand and get completely. Your generation will get just trashed for it, and we're just like, hey, Jesus would literally invite people to the table who didn't understand one another.
We've lost track of grace and all that,
right?
You know, and as you get the names called of you're a racist, you're this, and the heart really isn't of that at all.
Right.
Now, some of the language might be considered that into some generations, but it's not necessarily.
And that's part of why too. There is. It's important for accountability, and it's important to unlearn some of that ignorance and some of the things that like is now no longer acceptable. And then it's also important to say, hey, this is just like, you know, where I am. Like, and this is like, I'm not where you are on the journey. And heck, I might never want to be where you're at in the journey, but can't we just like sit at the table?
Yeah, you can sit at the table. And again, it's like I have always said, this is one of the biggest lines I think I've used in the last few years is the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
Because, you know, you can't talk that way because you're labeled whatever it is. And you're a snowflake over here because you can't handle anything.
Right.
The truth is somewhere in the middle there.
Right.
You know.
And when people want to go far to the extreme on, you know, any conversation.
It doesn't matter any topic,
it's honestly just a turnoff. Nowadays, it's just like and that's part of why I think we can't have the conversation anymore, is because it's like to get your voice heard now, because there's so much chatter, you have to go to the extreme.
Yeah.
And you're just like, can't we just have a meal and one of us be a liberal and one of us be a conservative and one of us be an independent and one of us be a boomer and, you know, one of us be black, one of us be gay, one of us be that. And like, can we just have a conversation and like, rather than ripping each other a new one?
And I think if we could, we are really off topic. I think if we could ever get there, if we could ever get there, I think people would be shocked to know how many
similar we were.
Similar that they are in a lot of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what's so fascinating about all of this is we all are passionate about different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that we're really passionate about that are kind of our make it or break it, we think the rest of the world cares we think the rest of the world needs to care about our view.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, if I don't share this with them, if I don't share with them that people who like pineapple on pizza are going to hell, who's going to tell them?
Yeah.
Who's going to tell them?
Yeah.
And very few people genuinely care about your opinion, is what I've learned.
Yeah. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say.
Kevin Mann, great point.
Opinions are like everybody's got one.
I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway,
can you say it for me?
No. Everybody else knows what I'm saying.
So anyway, boomers, boomers. Last thing, so boomers on perfectionism, kind of to bring it back, and this is something we've already talked about. Your generation views perfectionism as being productive. Excuse me, and successful.
That big old blizzard.
Yep, big old blizzard. Productive,
yeah,
and successful.
So what does God say about all this?
So what does God say?
Let me read you a piece of scripture here from 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 through 10. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about, is why a lot of times we will share our vulnerabilities, our stuff that we stumble in, that we have trouble with. We do it from the stage all the time.
Yeah.
To let people know, we're as faulty and messed up as everybody else is.
Mm-hmm. And when you see even just different churches, mega church, where they've got the highest production and their pastors are so like on, and the material's so good, and it looks so perfect. It Hollywood produced.
Right.
Okay? And it's not every mega church.
No.
Okay. Some of the pastors that we follow do get vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two groups of people. Some that are attracted to the vulnerability because it's real. But then there's also a large group of people who are just, attracted to the production and the Hollywood, the Instagram-worthy photo.
Right.
And what we found is it's so much more authentic to get this, be authentic.
Right.
And that's what I think Paul's boiling down to, is like, hey, you can strive for perfection and it'll kill you. But strive for Jesus and understand that his grace is sufficient.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between perfection and excellence?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think you can strive for excellence.
Yeah.
And be the best you can be.
Yep.
Do the best you can be.
Yep.
Produce the best that there is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we strive in our little environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think of C3 Sports. I think of youth groups. I think of Sunday mornings, whatever. Now my Blizzard is doing that. And we do strive. We want to do the best we can. We don't want to put a shoddy product out there, but yet we don't get hung up, I think, on the perfection.
Yep. You ready for this? This might be another light bulb.
Okay.
Perfectionism says it's all comes down on my shoulders. It's all about me.
Uh-huh.
Okay. As a Christ follower, excellence says that I'm going to be the best version of myself, but God's grace is good enough, is sufficient enough. Okay. So it's not all about me.
That's good.
Perfectionists say it all comes down to what I can produce. The way Christ calls us to live in excellence is say it all comes down to what Jesus has already done.
Right.
So
and we're just going to lift him up, and
Yep.
we're just gonna, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Susan says control goes along with perfectionism. Yeah. Again, that idea of I've got to control. And that's part of where people who are perfectionists struggle so much with like letting go of tasks.
Yeah.
Or empowering others because they want it done the way they see the vision.
Do you see what Michaela said here? I think perfectionism is when excellence becomes an idol.
That'll preach.
That'll preach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably ought to write that down somewhere.
Michaela, you should teach that someday.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
That's really good. And what it all boils down to is, perfectionism, grace, tying it all in a bow, putting it all back together. Okay, all the things we talked about. With grace, really comes down to that, is give yourself grace, okay? Give your children grace, give your bosses grace, give your pastors grace, give your politicians grace. Grace, grace, grace. If you're dwelling so much on being perfect, it comes down to like what Michaela said. It becomes an idol.
It becomes an idol.
If you dwell on it, and I think that's the word what it boils down. Are you dwelling on perfection? Then it becomes an idol. I tell my brother all the time, it's like, hey, today be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, strive for excellence. Strive for being the healthiest physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally person you can be. But the moment you start dwelling on that, it becomes an idol.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Man, 8:34, and we're going to log off.
Man. There we go.
What a great day to be alive. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, tuning in. We are off next week, and then April 28th. Join us for game night. Anything goes.
Anything goes.
Thank you for being a part of this tonight.
I'm excited about anything goes.
I'm excited about anything goes.
We have 2 opportunities that we would love for you to engage with, hopefully coming up this weekend. And Good Friday service starts tomorrow.
Yep, 4:15 is the date, and 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock.
4 o'clock
are the time,
and 6 o'clock. And it's going to be a really cool service, and we would love if there's any way for you to get here live because we're
in person only.
Yeah, it's not going to be online, so we would love for you to come. That and then on
4/17 Sunday, Easter Sunday. Well, because I put the podcast out later, I have to do the actual dates. I can't just say tomorrow.
Yeah. There you go. That's
but
true.
Easter
on Sunday,
9 o'clock,
Sunday.
10:30 a.m. Easter Sunday.
It's gonna be that's gonna be a cool service, and we're excited about that. It's gonna be some fun stuff that we're gonna do, and so we're gonna celebrate.
Yep. Hey, have a great rest of your evening. Tell someone you love them, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.